Hey everybody, this is Jasmine and this is Grant over here. We are right now at Mag Comic Expo. This is the third annual and we've been here all 3 years, right?
Yes, we have.
And tell us about how we came to this.
Well, funny story actually. So Grant, the Grant who founded this festival, not me, was my teacher back when I went to Pellissippi. He was my biology teacher, and he came into our comic book store one day and mentioned that he was trying to do a comic expo at the Magnolia campus at Pellissippi. So we got in there, and we've been here all 3 years, and this has by far been the best year. It keeps getting better each year, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Actually, I was just saying that the other day. Like, I feel like Grant has definitely grown it.
It's grown, yes.
Like,
it's
there's been
more...
a few like growing pains, but I feel like it's like in so much more involved, community involved, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And how you feel that when we're here and you see people that we know or people we don't know, and just it's been just a cool like community fun event. So I'm really proud to be here.
Yeah. Let's see. So tonight we have the after party for this con at Central Cinema, where we're going to be hosting X-Men animated series writer Mark Edward Edens. He actually wrote Night of the Sentinels, the first episode of X-Men animated series. We'll be showing X2, some episodes that he wrote, and of course doing a Q&A with the man himself. We're going to have a raffle prize. We're going to have some giveaways. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see you guys there. Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm just going to ask him a handful of questions and then turn it over to you guys.
Make them easy.
First off, so tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry and what led you to working on this show.
Well, I got into the animation business because I knew a guy who knew a guy, which is the best way to get into anything in Hollywood. Went to UT with a guy named Eric Lewald, who you may have noticed was a story editor. He had made a movie in college. He and Glenn Morgan made a movie called Incoming Freshman, which, have you ever showed it here?
No, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Is that Glenn Morgan who worked on like X-Files?
No, he's an editor. He's edited a lot.
Okay.
And Eric and I had written some things together. We got flown to New York for a couple of weeks to do a fast rewrite on a movie called The Prowler.
I know that movie.
Yeah, which was just a low-budget horror movie. And then he went out to Hollywood, and the guy next door to him was, in the apartment next door, was a staff writer for Hanna-Barbera. And they were just starting to do shows like the Transformers and the GoBots, and the big toy company financed, 52-episode syndicated shows, and suddenly they needed a lot more animation writers than they ever had before. And so he got Eric started, and Eric got me started, because he knew I was a better writer than he was anyway. And don't tell him I said that. And that's how I got into the business. And when it came time to do the X-Men, we had both done a lot of different shows. He'd story edited a bunch. I had story edited a show for Saban, the production company, called Little Shop, which I don't know if anybody saw. Very few people did, but it was a really funny show. It was it was based on Little Shop of Horrors, and an animated show. And so they trusted both of us, and so they brought us in to the first meeting with Stan Lee and all the people. And the idea that was that we were going to story edit the X-Men together. And then they told us that they had only budgeted for one story editor, but we could do it and just split the fee. Which, you have a feeling, well, what if we end up doing more than half the work and I'm only going to get half the money? And Eric liked to go to meetings more than I did, and I liked to just sit in front of the computer and write. And so I became the head writer, and he was the story editor. And of course, at the time, they were just doing 13. Nobody had any idea it was going to be a big success, because they tried before with Kitty, Pride of the X-Men, with Kitty Pryde, and it hadn't worked at all, because nobody had figured out how to really do it and make it work. And so we did that. Nobody was on a longer contract. After we did that, we moved on to Exo Squad, which was a show that I liked better, but actually didn't get the audience that X-Men did. But that's how we got into the show.
So when you started on the show, were you familiar with the characters or Marvel Comics really at all, or?
Neither Eric nor I had ever read an X-Men comic book before we started on the show. But two of the producers on the show had, and they were big fans. They'd read them all, and they loved the X-Men, and they knew all about it. And they put together kind of a little guide for us that let us know, what the X-Men was all about and what was going on. And when we had ideas, they would suggest things. And like the one character they knew they had to use was Wolverine, because in '92 he was the most popular.
Oh yeah, he's huge.
He was already the most popular X-Men. So we worked with them and just tried to stay true to what was in the comic books. We tried to treat it with respect. Curiously, it was in a way it was with more respect than Stan Lee had for it. He wanted to do a much younger oriented show with himself introducing the show every week. Sitting around with a bunch of kids saying, "Hey kids, let's watch an X-Men."
Oh yeah, he wanted to do like the narration like he did on the Spider-Man cartoon or something like that.
Yeah, he was. A lot of people make the mistake when they're writing for children or writing for a show that has to appeal to children. They try to make it too childish. And our idea was just to do a show that teenagers who were fans of the comic books would like, people in college who'd read like the comic books, and 8, 9, 10-year-old boys and girls would all love. And so we did it that way.
When I found out, when I read the book that Eric wrote, that you guys didn't really know the comics, I was really impressed, because that's one thing I always thought was good about the show is you would translate some of the bigger storylines, like the Phoenix saga and all that, and you actually did a really good job like translating it from the comics. So I was surprised about that, but I guess with those producers knowing that was a big help.
Yeah, they would tell us if anything was not fitting with it. It was Larry Houston and Will Minio.
Okay.
Were the two guys that were big X-Men fans, and they would put little Easter eggs in the show. They'd show little character, if in the script and they, sometimes when they weren't allowed to do it, they would do it because it would say, a mutant is seen, doing such and such, and they would put in a specific mutant that they really didn't have
the rights to or something. That's
funny. Yeah, just because they knew they could get away with it.
Okay, let's see what else I got here. All right, so I read that you kind of were under a time crunch getting the show off the ground. Like you had a pretty early date. Like, could you talk about that a little bit and how you dealt with that?
Yeah, we started in the spring of '92. I think the first script is dated March of '92, and it takes so long to do the animation because you do the script and they storyboard, then they record the voices, and then they do the animation. And it takes so long to get everything right that we had to do the first 13 scripts in just a tremendous hurry. Mm-hmm. I think I probably wrote detailed premises for all 13 in like a week or something.
Wow.
And then you go off and do a script. Probably finishing a script every week, or maybe more than one every week. So it was a really hurried schedule that we were on.
Mm-hmm. And I guess like my final question is, what do you feel about the show like resonated with people so much that it's still so popular today?
Yeah, well, I think a big appeal that it's had, and I've heard that from a lot of fans that go into cons and things, is just the fact that pretty much every kid at some point feels weird or odd or doesn't fit in, and that that was the X-Men. They were the people, but yet they had special powers, and so they were special, but they didn't fit in, and everybody kind of feels that way, as they're growing up. One thing I really liked about the X-Men more than Cape Crusader kind of shows where you've got a crime fighter with superpowers and things, is that the X-Men, as you can see in these first ones, they were both the heroes and the problem. And it took place in our world. They didn't come from some imaginary place, under the sea or some imaginary country, that nobody had ever heard of, or from some other planet, like Superman or something. They existed in our world and they were trying to fit into our world, and it kept it kind of grounded. I mean, later on the stories get a little weirder.
Yeah.
But when you do so many, you have to get.
Yeah, you gotta go out there a little bit.
But that was nice. And just the basic theme of it. I mean, everybody has certain talents, certain abilities. That they're sort of born with. Maybe you're smart, or you're strong, or you're good looking, or you're hardworking, or you're something. And you could either, like the mutants, you could either use them for something good or for something bad. I mean, and it's up to you to decide, what you're going to do with the talents that you have. And that was the problem that was facing all the mutants. They had to make that choice what they were going to do.
And I guess I do have one more question. So did Marvel, were there anything that they kind of pushed on you guys, like some characters they wanted to have in, or specific storylines, or anything that you had to work in that you may not have otherwise?
Yeah, I don't remember any specific storylines. I mean, we talked a lot about which characters to use. We tried to get a good mix of powers and personalities. You got to have Wolverine and you got to have Cyclops because he's the leader of the group. And we were always looking for things that would generate conflict. And if you got the angry loner and the Boy Scout, leader, of course they're going to be conflict. And then when you throw in Jean Grey that they're both in love with, it's perfect. And we liked Rogue because, although I generally hate superheroes who can fly, if they don't have wings, it just bothers me. But her power to absorb things was also such a liability, which I think we're going to see in the next episode.
Oh yeah, it's a big part of the next episode.
That was really interesting. And so we got to try to get a nice mix of powers and things. And it was interesting. One thing that we didn't think about at all was getting a mix of male and female characters. And then when it was done, we looked at them and say, this is interesting. Half the characters are women and about half of them are men.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell out that way because we were going for the most interesting mix of characters. And Jubilee was sort of our the eyes of the audience. Because for a TV show to be successful, you had to have a lot bigger audience than just the people who read the comic books. Even though it was a really popular comic book, back then especially, you had to have like millions of people watching the show or it'd be a flop. So we had to reach out to people who didn't know anything about the X-Men, who hadn't read the comic books. And because she was new, because she was learning everything, sometimes a little clumsily, as I noticed in the first one, some of the exposition was a little strange. But the audience could find out who the X-Men were and what they were about at the same time that she did. So that's why we picked one younger character, and plus kids would kind of identify with her. They all want to be 14 or 15.
Yeah. No, I think that's part of why these first two episodes, I think they really hold up and work well, is using that as to bring people in.
You could know absolutely nothing about the X-Men, and it all made sense because they explained it to you, because they had to explain it to her. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's turn it over to the audience. Who has a question? Start back there.
First off, I want to say thank you for coming and thank you for writing this awesome show. This show actually is what started me, my love for Marvel that I have now that's grown to what it is today. But just speaking of the show, did you have a favorite episode that you loved writing? Like one that you would consider your favorite?
No, I don't think I really did. Although I actually, I like the Phoenix saga, which I did. I think my older brother, I think, you have to know somebody. My older brother did the Dark Phoenix or something. But I did a lot of the ones on the Phoenix and worked out the stories for all of them. And that's, I remember that. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I remember that one being a nice thing. And it got a lot of good feedback. A lot of people, after they saw the movie, said that, the animated show did the Phoenix. But with so many of them, we are doing them in such a hurry because we're on such a tight schedule that you kind of do one and put it aside and immediately you're on the next one. And so you don't really have time to enjoy the writing process as much. You're just kind of rushing to get it done.
Back there.
Yeah, was there ever any pushback on how serialized it was? I mean, you're basically counting on kids to make an appointment TV every Saturday, right?
Yeah, and that was a big concern because other shows hadn't done that at this point. And you know, since it wasn't a caped crime fighter with a villain of the week, we needed an ongoing story, especially since we wanted to do more character stuff in the show, and we had to have time to do that. You know, these episodes are like 22 minutes, and you have to have action. You know, every so often you have to keep the action going and stuff. There's very little time for any kind of character stuff, so we really wanted to have a continuing story. And Margaret Lesh at Marvel was the executive who was making all the decisions that made it possible. I mean, she was saying, yes, let's do a continuing story, and we'll just do a little previously on X-Men recap before everyone. And that and the tone, the more a little more adult tone that made the stories more interesting, I thought. She was the one who greenlit all that, and nobody knew if it was going to work or not. And when they actually put it on the air, they had production problems and some delays, and they didn't always show them in order, which was a problem when they first ran it, but they eventually straightened it out. But I think that really helped the show, and it let people know that you could do a continuing story like that, and people would keep up with it.
So you mentioned earlier that the team would sneak characters that they maybe weren't supposed to in, and then he asked if there was anything Marvel wanted. Was there anything you guys wanted, like a character or a storyline you wanted to do that Marvel just straight up said, nope, we can't do that?
The one thing that we that Eric and I were really convinced we had to do is we had to kill somebody. Because so often with shows for a young audience, they won't let you make the violence really threatening. It's like they want the violence, but it has to not hurt anybody. And to me and to Eric, that really lowered the stakes. It felt as if that couldn't happen, then they were never in any real danger. And so killing Morph was a big thing. That's another thing that Margaret Lesh and Chaim Saban and the people at Fox all agreed to do, which we thought was really important.
Is that why that character was created, just to kill him off?
Yes, they had a character. They had a character named Changeling who was in the comic books.
Okay.
And Morph, they didn't want to kill somebody who was in the comic books because they wouldn't want to use him again. So they sort of took what that character could do and changed the name, and he was specifically put in so we could kill him.
Seems like a red shirt.
But he can change his shirt instantly.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But the interesting thing was after the show was done and they started testing it with audiences, they would ask the audiences, well, what was your favorite character after the first one was done? Everybody said Morph. Because I think they liked it because it was funny. It was always making fun of people, making fun of Calvin Klein commercials on TV and stuff. And so that's why, as often happens in television, he mysteriously wasn't dead later on. They thought he was dead, but he managed to survive. But we made some good stuff out of that since he resented the fact that they'd gone off and left him.
So after spending so much time writing with the show and everything, what do you think when those first few movies are coming out? That it was kind of weird for you seeing live action and everything.
I think I've only seen 2 X-Men movies, and one of them was Logan, and the other one was something else. That's something I really can't. I haven't seen it. You're kind of envious in a way, not just because the people that write the movies get paid a lot more, but also because when you write a cartoon like this, especially back then when it was all hand-drawn animation stuff, as you're writing it, you visualize it much more spectacular than it ends up being in a Saturday morning kind of limited budget cartoon. And so you probably enjoyed the show much more than I did when it came out, because I watch it and I think, that should have looked better, he was supposed to do this. And so you're kind of envious of the movies. And it was interesting that a lot of you may know this. they asked Bryan Singer, you know, how he got to know the X-Men, you know, before he made the movies, and he said that, well, we never read any of the comic books. We just went back and watched the animated show to get a feel for what the X-Men was about. So it kind of makes you feel good, but you know, they should have cut out the middleman and just.
All right, right there.
I was watching one of the episodes of X-Men where I was really surprised that they, you know, did this as with Nightcrawler in, I think maybe season 3 or 4, when they showed him as a really religious, you know, being, you know. Did you get any? I mean, and it wasn't so like, it was so not pandering. It wasn't. It was so genuine. You know, they didn't. It was, you know, genuine in a way that really made it work. My question is what did you get any like backlash from Christians or anything, or was it really a positive?
Yeah, you know, I wish I'd written that episode because I like, you know, I like the idea of doing things that are real to so many people, or, you know, that are such a big part of everybody's life, and just not, you know, not ignoring it because you're afraid of some reaction. And that was a brave decision on the part of Margaret Lesh and everybody involved, just to do that. Not and you know, they were very respectful, and it was a very serious episode. And I think there's been a lot of positive feedback on that, just because people like that. But that was usually, if there's something that people have an idea that somebody might object to, they just stay away from it. And it was nice to see them do that. Yeah.
All right, we'll do one more. McKay.
How aware are you of the new series, and how do you feel about it?
I haven't seen it yet because I'm too cheap to stream Disney Plus. But I think my daughter does, so I'll watch it at her house. The feedback I've seen and the clips that I saw have been very positive. Partly because of the problem I was talking about, where the writers always wish things looked better, and now with computers helping, you know, the animation and things. You know, they stay with the same style and stuff, but it's smoother and better done. It's as if they could had a bigger budget, and maybe they did, I don't know, but probably just computer. Because I've written shows that were computer generated. There's a show called Acceleracers for Hasbro, kind of a futuristic racing type thing, and it was really nice to see, because not only is the action much more spectacular because you get all these angles and camera movements and things that you couldn't do in the drawn animation, but in computer-generated animation, it's like the actors are better, not the voices, but just I think they read as more real. Somehow the faces seem more real, so it's almost like they're just better actors. You get better performances. But everything I've heard has been positive, and everybody seems to like it, you know, because it picks up right where the old one left off. And some people who were kind of puzzled with Morph changing, you know, and not having a face and being, I think he's binary, which to me makes perfect sense because Morph had no particular body. You know, he was always somebody else. I mean, as we see him in this show, if you think about it, that may not be how he was born.
Right.
It's just the body that he's decided to assume, you know, at this time. So to me, that makes a lot of sense for it. The only thing I would criticize, because you know, I have to criticize something. Some of Beast's dialogue in the clip I saw sounded a little strained. But it felt that way to me sometimes in this show. Just if I didn't write it, you know, it wasn't perfect. That's how writers think.
What comic did Wolverine first appear in? You were right there.
Incredible Hulk.
You have the issue number?
No.
Does anybody know the issue number?
I do.
What is it?
181.
actually incorrect.
Is it really?
It's 180. He's on the last page, 180.